Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage our second panel for this morning. We have AI-assisted design and construction, moderated by Greg Schloinet.
Morning, everyone. This is a great panel. I think certainly coming after the first one, some people might call me a technologist that's actually a pessimist. So seeing the last wrap-up questions, I think it's really fitting to actually sort of have a group of people that are actually building tools that look like the things we've been asking for a long time. So that's it for me. We'll start with Anthony and go from there.
Okay. Hi, I'm Anthony Houck. I'm the COO and co-founder of Hypar, as on the giant slide. I'm going to show you a couple of ways. We got to hold that video for a second. I'm going to show you a couple of ways our cloud platform for generative design, construction, and building product manufacturers are used by our customers. And our first customer is Obayashi. They have a business where they develop high-rise midtown towers in Tokyo. And they have the typical concerns that developers have. You know, are they zoning compliant? What's their finances look like? Should they build on this site? And then since this is an AI-assisted panel, I'm actually going to show some actual AI that we did with them, and we share a patent pending with them and the Stanford Research Institute. So go on the video, please. So here, you can also intervene in things you do on Hypar by hand. So here we're just maximizing out to the zoning envelope. And on the right, I've obscured their pricing information, but that's a running total of what the size is. But here's the fun bit where we start dropping in photos. This is the AI part, and actually creating real 3D facades based on photos that they just took around the area, which was part of the remit on this project, where they wanted to be able to make sure they were fitting in context. Since we're in New York, some of you folks are familiar with the legendary Waldron diagram that one must produce when your daylighting has to be approved by the city. So we made something where you can drop a model into our site and actually get that diagram, find out if you're passing and failing, work in other pieces of software, bring it in, and try to get to a passing grade, which you'll see here in a second. And then at the end, of course, then you can grab a diagram like this and bring it into your drawings. And since we're a platform, we do all kinds of stuff like this. So we can work with partners like Foresight Digital and their FastPlan product, where they make healthcare programs. And this is taking one of their programs and just dropping it in here with theoretically an existing building already on a site. And at first, it's kind of dull. We just sort of spread the program across the infinite landscape so you can kind of see comparison of functions. But it gets fun when one of our engineers hits the magic button, put it all in the building for me. And then we just pack that into the building, and you can see the program is actually bigger than the building. And I know this never happens in professional life, but you can see that now what the engineer is trying to do is going to add 2 stories onto that tower to see if he can scoop up the rest, and he doesn't quite get it. But you can see how this process would go back and forth, and then allowing you to study like vertical adjacencies, for example, and shuffle things around. We do a lot of office planning. A lot of our customers do interiors, but they like to work with us because we go one step deeper. So this is kind of a ceiling planner that works right on top of our office planner. And what's happening up on the upper right is there's just a material takeoff of all the tiles and all the linear grids. And we're making adjustments and changing which rooms have ceilings and such, and then constantly getting an update. So we go down to very fine levels of detail as well. We're kind of a bookending platform. And you can see we go really tight details because that joint is 2 inches away from the doorway. And so that's going to fail. And so here you can adjust the wall board to be correct. And so, in conclusion, what we do is we made a cloud platform where people can automate their expertise and incorporate it into their production. And we get a lot of interest from both the high-end feasibility side and the very detail-oriented production, we're delivering materials on site side. So that's it for me.
Oh, good thing I have the order. I forgot. Kyle, you're next.
I'm pretty sure I'm next. So, hey everybody, nice to see you today, or at least with the lights on, it's tough to see you, but I'm sure you're out there. Kyle Bernhardt, I'm the CRO at TestFit, and we make feasibility super fast. Let's roll the video. And so we're an AI-driven application that's all about understanding whether things work very quickly, understanding is this going to be financially feasible. And we do that via a desktop application that's got integrated mapping information. It understands different parcels of land, so it makes it easy to understand which sites you might be working on. And the way the application functions is rather than necessarily sculpting in the app, you're basically defining the constraints for an AI that is working in an interactive way. So, we might present a couple of different options that you can work on, but you can get into a skeleton mode and you can change the underlying overall layout if you want to. But what really is our secret sauce is the idea that we're maintaining in real time the building program based around your inputs. So it's not 5,000 options you're choosing between one, it's the option based around the specific definition that you've given as a user. So I could say the exact same building and understand what it would look like from a financial perspective between a bunch of studio apartments versus a bunch of 3 bedrooms based around where it's located. And you can even define a specific kit of parts in terms of the units that are actually filling the building inside of it. So I can go in there and I can define things like where the balcony is located, and I can basically tell the AI, hey, I want you to find the best fit with this very specific set of options based around how we like to build. You can start to mess around with your core locations and really get to the design of the building that's going to be feasible for you from a financial perspective. You can drop in your amenity spaces and move that around, and everything's going to work dynamic. And we'll talk about this more today, but one of our key ideas is that the AI experience that's going to win in the long run is one where it's more Iron Man suit than it is the Terminator that kind of takes over everything and runs rampant on humanity. And so that's really the ethos of the experience we have. And we support a wide variety of different project typologies in residential. We do industrial as well, and we're really excited about growing beyond that. But for us, it's just all about speed and delivering the mundane in an automated way and freeing up our users to work on the really fun, creative stuff. So that's TestFit. Looking forward to the rest of the conversation.
Perfect. Violet?
Hey, I'm Violet. Thanks for having me. So I'm a senior product manager at Delve by Sidewalk Labs Google. And very similar to other folks, it is an AI product for neighborhood planning. I also teach and advise on a new master's program called Computational Design at Columbia University. So you see a lot of this stuff kind of popping up. And then I also co-organize a meetup group called Architechies, which is an adorable name. And if anyone's interested in either Delve or the Columbia programs or Architechies, please reach out to me. I'm very nerdy about this stuff and really happy to kind of connect folks. So you can go ahead and roll the video. So what's really interesting about Delve is that it's focused on this pre-development process, but really about speeding up and optimizing that early phase process. And so this is for developers, it's for architects, it's for cities. When we're working with developers, they're primarily looking to find the highest and best use for a site. So very recently, we worked with a developer that was able to find 200 additional units just on a 12-acre site. And it was also better for daylight and open space. So those are often in contrast to one another. Architects have primarily been using this to optimize their existing designs. So what's really useful here is that they can not only optimize an existing design, but then go and be able to communicate and get buy-in on a particular design direction with the metrics that really back it up. So financials like profit on cost and development yield, but also all those quality of life metrics. And then finally, with cities, they're usually looking really to start driving the conversations in development. So in this instance, they're able to really set more aggressive targets. So being able to set aggressive development growth targets, but also more aggressive quality of life targets. And then also be able to use Delve to really get stakeholder buy-in. So whether that's like getting communities on board, being able to see what is possible, it's not just about return on investment, but you actually have to get things approved. So yeah, thanks.
Perfect, thank you. Michael?
Great, thank you. Michael Navarro, I'm with Suffolk Construction, and we're here with a generative design solution as well, using AI in design and construction. And the unique value proposition is we also have our own pre-construction platform, web-based, custom-built, and they're integrated. So the video will show both of those. We believe that connecting this relatively nascent technology with the next steps in the process to get the building actually in the ground is where we add unique value. So you can roll tape, please. Thank you. So here we have a 3D interactive map within the web, and we're combining multiple different data sources across, it has the whole nation. We see parcel data here, climate data, zoning data. The idea is to provide all the context required to identify the highest best use for a parcel of land, considering the goals of the developer. So now we're looking at this parcel of land, and we're gonna zoom in here and go into the next step, define the program. So we're more a little focused on urban, vertical stacking uses, and here I'm adding 3 below grade levels of parking. And then after that, I'll add a level of retail. And this particular neighborhood likes to have retail on the ground floor plane. And then we'll go with an apartment use. We're handling multiple different uses, but we're gonna go with apartment here. And we'll make it 20 stories in this demonstration. And then we're gonna look at the top of this tower, and it's just gonna be a maximum kind of buildable area. That's not great for the asset class. So we have algorithms for each asset class. In this case, a double loaded condition where there's units on either side of a corridor. And it's returning the best option as far as cost, but it's gonna give you other options you can use, and so we're switching one here. Now we'll go into the unit mix, and you can see that you can adjust your desired unit mix. And those units are tied into our pre-construction platform. You're gonna see that in a minute. I'll talk more about it in a second. So now as we generate a solution, we'll generate the layout that meets that intended mix, while also putting things like code-compliant egress stairs, elevators based on the number of units, tell data rooms, trash rooms, electrical rooms, all of the components that are required. And we can fill in any polygon with that kind of layout. So we don't want to be stacking predetermined polygons. We want to be able to fill any polygon with the desired mix. You can also see some parking layout there, and I'll throw a facade on there and a roof. Now, one thing to note, that roof is including a screen wall, which in my experience could cost $2 million just on that screen wall. So you can't ignore it. And it has the mechanical penthouse as well. So throwing the context back on within the fabric of the city here, I'm gonna go into the next point, which is the finances or the hard costs. So it's generating hard costs. Our estimating platform is generating costs within seconds. An API call is made and it returns cost, and then you can drill into it. So now we're actually looking at our estimating application. You can see here, these are the bid packages. It's broken down in great detail, and now we're in even more detail, every single line item within those bid packages. Not only do we have regional cost data across all the regions where we operate, but also we know how to assemble the bricks. And there, you can see here, there's all of this domain knowledge that has been implemented in formulas that are transparent, that all of our users are using day in and day out, and are evolving it. You can see here, this is our unit mix. Maybe, I guess you can maybe see it, font might be small. These units are from our database of units. Again, we're one of the largest developers of multifamily units, right? So, or builders. So all of these units, we know what's in there. We know all of the detail that's in there. We're pricing it down to the detail. If you want to change your tile in your bathroom, price per square foot material, you can. We have a finish schedule in here as well. So I just use default rooms. You can draw rooms inside of the generative design app, but here we're bringing default rooms in. And I'll speak for just a couple more minutes. Thank you. But so we have that finish schedule where you can actually decide what you want on the walls, floor, ceiling, and we have default values for those. The idea is generate the design, but then the next step, well, how do we build it? How long is it gonna take? What is it gonna cost? And what do you get? So right after being able to show these different design concepts and choosing one, it's now, all right, what is it gonna cost? And let's drill into the detail and make the little tweaks. And the whole idea here, I'll give the one punchline and we can get into the show, is that we're trying to make decision-making faster. And we believe that the inefficiencies in this industry within that early period of time of design is all about decisions that are slowing it down. And if we can provide the stakeholders the information they need on demand, then we feel that we can speed up that process and get more deals in the ground faster. That's the punchline.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So as you see, there's a very good mix of different approaches, different focuses, I think. One of the things I want to just start with is a very high level and sort of practical stuff is, like, what was the customer you had in mind when you started building this tool? And then, and I would say that the product and user could be different people at this point. So what was that transition? Like, what's the goal you started with? How has that changed and migrated over time? And then have you seen a change between the customer and the user, and sort of describe that for us? Anybody want to go first, or I could pick somebody?
I guess we have a journey around that. I come out of architecture, and so does my partner, Ian Keogh. And actually, to your point, Michael, the very first conversation we had before HypeR was named was, what do people want to do? They want to make better decisions faster, right? We thought architects are our people. They're going to love us, And then it turns out that when you bring a time-saving device to people who think their business is billing for time, they have some hesitation. But what ended up happening was everybody who needed to actually deliver something physical into the field got very interested in us rather quickly. So one of our earliest customers was a building product manufacturer that did roof drainage, of all things. I had no idea it was that complicated. We've been working with them for a couple of years. And the business problem that they presented us originally was, we see a huge opportunity in logistics buildings in the EU. All these systems have to be engineered. We don't get paid for that. We have so many engineers, we can leave money on the table because we don't have enough engineers, and so we work with them to automate that kind of thing. So for us, it turned out that people who had processes that basically humans were running and who needed to deliver physical things into the field were the most interested in us. And we've actually kind of moved a bit away from the design side and into much more of the two ends on the feasibility of people who are thinking about building and the actual deployment of material in the field. So that was a big change for us over the evolution of our company.
Sure. I'll go, yeah, sure. Well, I think if we look at the personas, right, we could probably categorize it as the developer, the architect, and the builder, right? And I'm sitting here and I'm representing the builder. We also have in our audience here someone that represents a design firm that we have as well. So if you have those three personas, a lot of these tools, like you said, you're starting with the architect, and we're taking a little bit more of an approach where we do actually see some of our people meeting with a client and working out that ideation stage live, where we may actually be the user as a builder. But also, we see the tool getting to the point where it's usable enough that we actually want to give it to a developer and have a developer use it themselves, right? So our order, I think we want to touch all of those personas, but our order of importance is a little bit different, I think, as we see it. And I don't want to discount either. On the architect side, we have another suite of tools that we're also building to try to get them into the fold. But yeah, we're touching those three in a unique priority.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about it in the beginning, the developers, architects, and cities. I think for us, it's also been very much a learning journey, because when we started, we were just building this because we needed it. We were developing something, and the different types of things we had to balance in terms of trade-offs was super immense. So like regulatory stuff, new types of financials that we had to project and understand. We also were trying to understand different types of transit models. And so doing this with a bunch of sub-consultants, each working with each other and then handing off some change was just not feasible. And so that's really what drove us into trying to solve this. And I think one of the things that we've really learned and leaned into as we've started to like really build on this with active customers is really starting to realize that by looking at a whole range of possibilities, by using the Google tech to automate and optimize bunches of designs, you're actually able to really de-risk what is possible for a site super early. And so that's been really interesting, because it's shifted the focus away from, something that was just a pain point of like, why doesn't our financial model just automatically populate based on the model that we have the architect make, to we need to do that, but we need to do it at a much broader scale. We need to automatically look at many scenarios.
So it's interesting. We've had a similar evolution at TestFit in that our primary customer was actually one of our co-founders, our CEO, who got really fed up counting parking spaces working at a residential developer and said, like, this sucks. I got to build some software to solve this. And so really, Clifton, our CEO, was our first customer. But our primary customer grew into being those developers who are looking to understand, how can I de-risk this development decision to move forward? I need to be able to do it very fast. And I'm not being able to get an answer back because fundamentally my pro forma and my spatial test fit didn't have any sort of relationship. There was a human experience barrier between those two things. And that's really what our technology did. And so, our customers have really evolved into those that understand the financial value of doing that very fast. And so that means, at this point, we've got a nice blend between developers and architects with a smaller percentage of general contractors in there, especially those just like Suffolk that have, hands on both sides from a development perspective as well as the general contractor perspective. Mm-hmm. And so that's really been the evolution that we've seen, but it's all tied to that same value proposition of being able to understand those decisions super fast.
Interesting. So I want to come back to this. Before we get there, I do want to just do something quickly that's basically a user experience. Can you just quickly walk through your onboarding process? Like how do you bring someone onto the platform? Because I think just knowing they're slightly different. So whoever wants to go first.
Why don't we go down the line?
Yeah,
Why don't we do that?
easier.
Let's do that. So we're a turnkey desktop app. So you could come to our website, we'll have a conversation with you, you could subscribe to it, you could be up and running in a matter of hours. So that's the direction that we've taken. There's some configuration to get your unit mix and everything locked in if you want to set that up, but that's basically how our app functions.
We started from a different point of view. We started from the platform point, so you could build different kinds of applications. So we have a space planning application that people can pick up in probably a couple of hours. Otherwise, we tend to do a lot of bespoke work for companies who have particular procedures they want to automate. And so the learning curve can vary. Sometimes we've done, for example, like a kitchen cabinet configurator for a manufacturer, and they were immediately on board because it's just a matter of like shoving appliances around. You get into stuff like optimized office planning that we've done for, say, Unispace, and that took months as they sort of changed their algorithm into something that was commercializable. So it can really vary all the way from coin operated all the way to long engagement to figure out how your business process works.
I know particulars about your product, and for the audience, like Hypar particularly is trying to bring a platform approach. So there's a developer focus there, a software developer focus. Right. How is that compared to the work you guys are doing when you consult?
Well, the interesting thing is we get the range of customers. So we had one customer, international construction company, came to us and they said, we have a team, we have an idea, and we have a schedule. Can you just train us how to use the platform? And they've been running ever since with their own team. And then all the way on the other end, we've had building product manufacturers say, I have a dream. Right, and then like the next question we have is, well, do you have a budget? So we've had people just come, and sometimes on the platform we just people surprise us. There's one architect who made a unit, actually something like you just showed, like a unit distribution module where he can like type in his unit sizes and how many he wants, and it distributes out through one of the envelopes that we provide. Mm-hmm. So, we see these applications suddenly kind of appear on the platform because people develop a couple of extra modules and then marry them up with other stuff we have. And so it's that broad spectrum. Sometimes we get surprised by what we see on there, and sometimes we know more than we ever wanted to know about a subject to get it working.
So Michael, I imagine this is the first time you've showed anything publicly, so I imagine your onboarding is internal right now.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and that is true. This is the largest audience that's seen any of the functionality. So yeah, thank you for raising the roof, Violet. And so our onboarding process right now, and first let's say what the whole idea here is let's get involved as far upstream as possible because that's how we can effectuate change. And that's what we need. We need some holistic change. There's a lot of great solutions out there now, and they're trying to apply wedges that can solve little problems and then scale, but we feel like there really does need to be ground change in this industry to fix some of the persistent inefficiencies. So our pre-construction platform was reaching pretty far upstream for a builder. This generative design application is even further, right? It's tying to as far upstream as possible, the ideation, where a developer their imagination is trying to optimize value on a parcel of land. And then we're connecting it seamlessly to our pre-construction platform so we can get to ground break and handle that whole process. So that means right now it is us sitting down with some clients. We do think that with an operator that have some ability and knowledge on how to use the solution. But as we evolve, we see this being a tool that can be used directly by the developer. And we want to put that in their hands and work out their ideas and give them a way to bring those ideas into reality.
We really have two different types of offerings. One is an engagement model that's really much more hand-holding so that we can really do custom things with the partners we work with. But then we also are working on the Delve 2.0, which is a self-service product that's really easy to spin up on your own. And I think what's really interesting about this is, we're really not a GIS. You don't need to know how to code. You don't need to have 3 master's degrees to understand the kind of menu items. We're really leaning into the ease of use that comes with a Google product. And so the onboarding process for this Delve 2.0 is really setting your program targets and the key things you want to optimize for, and then you're off to the races. I think there, a lot of the additional configuration happens over time after you've seen a batch of options, and you can continually adjust and save the direction of your designs for later use. But we're really trying to kind of, as much as possible, make this the easiest to use product possible.
And Greg, if I could just add, I would just say to the folks who are adopting technology out there, if someone asks you the question, what's your rollout plan, and your answer is a blank stare, you should think about that. Who do you want to roll it out to? How quickly? What does that user look like? That kind of thing. It's a super helpful. And I've had conversations with companies where I'll ask that question, and I do get the 1,000-yard stare. But I asked one company, and they told me, and I was really impressed. I'm like, oh, we have these people in these locations, and this is their task, and they're like, oh, okay, I have nothing to help you with here. But it's really key because you all know it's change management, right? It's not necessarily about technology. It's about changing the way people work.
So I want to come back to some of the sort of earlier discussions. One of the things that's, if you look around the industry, so these are 4 representative examples. I mean, you guys keep track better than me, but you probably have 4 or 8 other sort of competitors that people would classify into the feasibility, planning, conceptualization stages of work. What about the timing made this all of them explode at the same time? Is it a technology that's finally available? The web is finally mature, which you're not even web, so that can't be it. So anybody have any insights why this is so valuable at this moment in time?
Oh gosh, what order would you like?
Yeah,
to go?
I
Who wants to start?
Yeah.
Go reverse. Why don't we start at the top? Why don't we go start there and go this way?
Well, I think we're probably all agreed that the industry as it works now is not working as best as it could, and it's a struggle. All of the technology is there, so I think that's another piece. You see a bunch of these programs popping up. Everyone coming out is probably building the next competitor or working with one of us. So it's just a completely change of mind of how to do work. But I think maybe the key or most important piece is that this is just required. This is required for development today. If you look around, you're going to have to deal with stricter regulations, higher targets. You want to hit carbon neutral. You want to make sure it's sustainable. But there's also greater pressure for more affordability, more housing units. What are we doing to address inequality so that we can actually get something built? And all the while, you need to somehow stay competitive and actually get something built in time. So I think that multitude of complexity that any development is dealing with just requires a looking at that problem with something like tech that can look at the problem more statistically and help you address it.
Right, yeah, objectively, like we were talking about in the green room, you know, providing some options that you might not think of. So yeah, for me, well, first I'll say, like, when I started in this industry 18 years ago, I totally fell for the promise of BIM, right? And I'm still disappointed today, unfortunately.
Sorry.
Right? Yeah. No, it's true though, right? It's largely kind of failed to fulfill its promise. But I do still believe in the promise, and I think that some of the technologies that are represented here on the stage can begin to fulfill that. I think that it's a couple things. One is the technology foundation that we have that allows someone like myself to manage teams of programmers and build some of this compelling technology has got to the critical mass where we can be effective at building it quickly. But also I think that there's a readiness of the people in this room and others in the industry where we have adopted and found value in certain solutions that have been adopted. And so we're more ready for these kind of solutions, be it the superintendent or the designer. And I don't think that readiness maybe was there before because we are an industry that is a little slow to adopt. I mean, I'm not trying to insult anyone. If anything, I'm insulting myself, right, too. But, and I think that there's a greater readiness now, and so the time feels right.
Yeah, picking up on that,
Yeah.
I think there's a large cultural shift where the industry is much more ready because this stuff has literally been around since 1962 with Doug Engelbart's paper on augmenting human intelligence. The example he used was an architect working on a building and being augmented by a system. And then we took this 60-year detour through let's draft on the computer, and here we are back again 3 generations later talking about this. And I think it's a couple of things. I think computing obviously has gotten cheaper and cheaper. 62, it would be very expensive to do this, right? And now it's so close to approaching free that it might as well be, so that helps. But I also think there's a kind of hidden thing that's going on that's demographic, right? Now, I've been in the industry long enough to go through 3 downturns now, possibly now maybe we're looking down the barrel of a 4th, right? And every time that happens, we get this huge chunk of talented people who do not like this cyclic way of working, and they leave, and they never come back. And we get these like demographic holes punched in our industry, and we're about to have another huge one with our most experienced people all retiring at once, with the baby boomers retiring, right? And all that expertise. We literally have a customer who said, this guy knows this much about our material distribution, and he's retiring. Can you they said to us, can you just download his brain into a piece of software that we can keep, right? And I think some of that's going on, that we have these demographic holes kind of moving through the industry. We can't find people, and what people think is then like, the only thing I can do now is automate or not take advantage of opportunities I see.
Yeah. So I'm going to play off that a little bit, but also put a slightly more contrarian perspective on the ultimate question of why feasibility. So, I think about it in terms of like, what job is technology doing for the project team? And historically, technology has helped you produce your drawings and helped you count things and help make sure you understand how long it's going to take. That's been the job that it's been doing. And the job of making the big decisions has been the place of the experts. And I think we've seen over the last 20 years the extent to which technology can do that job if you set it up well. So it kind of created an opportunity there where I think humans were ready to believe at scale that could be possible. So I think that's point one. And then the other practical reality is you could probably do what we're doing and try to apply it to like drawings and detailed stuff, but there's a bunch of behemoths that do that really well, and it's super freaking hard. So everybody looked at it and said, you know what, I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna take this, because then I don't have to go into a red ocean and go do battle with a bunch of industry incumbents. And at the end of the day, that's a practical reality that generates those 8 different feasibility solutions, is you don't have to go do battle. And so, certainly that's one of the reasons why we're sitting here.
And it's underserved.
Yeah,
by
it's totally
drafting
underserved.
programs, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is interesting as we transition, like thinking ahead. Okay. So Michael, you talked about your scope is sort of early into construction. Anthony, you pointed out that your customers are feasibility or implementation. Besides the behemoths, like there is a chasm of basically really intelligent platforms that the information sort of dies, right? All this knowledge will die as you go to the next phase. There are these sort of, if you want to think about it, it's the architects that are causing the problem, but it might be a whole host of other things. Or is it things like actually it becomes a one driver to many driver problem, and that's why this is harder to optimize? What's your feel on like where this goes and how you actually sort of either jump past, which is in some people's mind is probably what they would like to do, skip design. It's a messy business. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll start back and go the other way.
Thank you. Good, because I have a strong opinion on this one. So thank you. I think there's two parts of this, because you can think about it through a technological lens, and of course you can make better technology to make certain information move past. But at the end of the day, like the reason why most data goes and dies is because no one's getting paid to make sure it doesn't die. There's plenty of very creative firms that if they get paid for it, they'd be glad to keep your data alive and move it from hand to hand. But the standards of care for delivering what you're contractually responsible for doesn't require you to do that. And I always say, altruism loses to capitalism in the Thunderdome 100% of the time. Yeah. So, you've got to kind of, at the end of the day, that's been one of my big lessons in this business is, we can talk about these things as in this aspirational way, but if you can't make your business more profitable and keep your firm, afloat on the back of delivering these different services, it's very challenging to get a broad scale adoption. And I think fundamentally that's the biggest challenge. And I won't go down the whole, we should do all IPD sort of dynamic, but what Suffolk is doing and that idea of, having a lot of those right stakeholders together and creating the financial incentives, to me, that's vastly more powerful than the next stage of technological innovation, because I'd assert that what exists today is capable of doing so much more than what we're actually doing, and the missing piece isn't tech, it's financial incentive.
Yeah, so. And actually, just to pick directly up on that, one of the things we do, and the jury's still out on whether this will really work, is we point out to our customers that yes, you have this thing that either you made or we helped you make that contains some of your expertise. You can keep that proprietary and private if you like as a distinct advantage, or you could also share that for money to other people who might want to use your expertise that's been embodied into the software. So we think there's kind of there's a financial incentive that you can start building into this. And so in the terms of data dying, right, like we're about kind of procedures that produce data. And the next step beyond that is, okay, I have all this data. That data should be a service to somebody else who needs the data, and they should pay for that because that's valuable, right? And so rather than it being so much a hand-supported consulting model where somebody has to call you up and like pay you for 5 hours to like explain to you what we did in this project, right? Or not pay you, there's a service that you go to and like, I need to know about this, and that costs some money, and then I get that, and then I move on. And so there's a way to kind of keep alive this data like Kyle's talking about through like financial incentives and make it accessible at choice to whoever needs it if they're willing to compensate for it.
Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, I'm going to say similar things probably. I think there's two main things that are causing friction, and one of them is the existing landscape of incumbent technologies. And the need for like 2D documentation and jurisdictions having authority wanting to accept those, and so there's some. And I'm reiterating that ground change that I think is in the future that's required to fix some of these problems. So that's one of them. And then to echo what some of these other people have said is the contractual lines that we now have and the disalignment of incentive. And so I think that those are two challenges to overcome, and our approach is to try to overcome them. And like I said, we're getting into design. We don't want to replace the designer or the creative mind, but we do think that we are going to add some value if we can reduce the monotony, and that the art and architecture can be pure and creative, and maybe that's incentive, right? We are trying to take those data elements and evolve them through the process and not lose them in the fragmented incumbent technologies that we have today.
Yeah, plus one to the incentives. I just feel like if you even look at this change happening now, we have this group, we have ULI, we have NCARB, like it really has to come from this cultural shift as well that's willing to embrace the kind of things that have forced us to deliver drawings or forced the industry to do things in a kind of waterfall handoff method. I think that using generative design type of tools also allows us to do some of the foundational pre-work in the in those early stages. So, because you're able to de-risk something super early on means that later on in the process, if you decide to change something, you've already vetted and de-risked what the trade-offs are for making that change. You're not caught, oh, wait, we need to move this building over 50 feet now or 20 feet. What's the actual implication there? And so I think this foundational work is going to be required in the future because it's just going to save you from being kind of pinned into a position that doesn't make sense.
And frees up the humans to do something less drudge-oriented.
Yeah, who wants to draw parking layouts?
Right, or count the spaces.
There's got to be someone. Nobody likes to do it.
Someone
You're right.
does.
There's some crazy
Mostly
person out there who loves, give me some more spaces to count.
Well, so this is I think we have 9 minutes. So I think one of the areas that it's the most technological part of this discussion, but I think it's fitting that everybody's platform communicates in two ways, just very generically, models and data. And that we have this discussion about drawings. And in our industry, there's a very strong push. You can get rid of them, or they're needed, or whatever opinion you have. They are a thing that provides a communication device. So one of the things if you think about is if you try to get past that, we have this problem of either the algorithms that actually inherently generate the model don't communicate. And if you think about self-driving cars, and specifically Tesla, what you see is the dash that shows you what the algorithm sees, as a sort of a visualization of what it's interpreting the world. And to me, if you think about it just practically, we need this for models because otherwise just looking at a model, you can't get that rich information that comes from a filtered view that is a drawing. So how do we, is this the rich area of study we have to actually look at? How do you make models communicate better? Or are we really just thinking about, well, there's data over here and we have a model and trust the model? How do you solve this?
Start that.
I feel, I feel like in the past, everything has focused a lot more around the noun version of building. So everything's about, this is what you can build here. This is the building object. This is what it looks like to construct it. And we're moving much more towards the verb version, which is, what is the actual outcome? What is this going to do in terms of value over time? What is this going to look like on a day-to-day for someone living there? What is the quality of life? And so I think just the fact that we're able to simulate and model those more behavioral things or things that are the verb really is the shift that's been needed so that we're not focused on the kind of tangible, kind of physical outcome without the thing we actually care about. What is the thing we're actually trying to measure?
Yeah. So my take on it is a bit of a daydream for me, and I think I probably share it with a few people, but of giving information to the person at the task at hand for the task. And I'm just going to harken back to the beginning of my career when I was managing the current set of documents on a complex urban high-rise project. It was bad. And then you wind up seeing guys in the field, right? Because the beginning of my career was actually managing work on the job. And it's some guy's got a torn piece of paper with scribbles on it or whatever, and it's a marked up something, and he's using that to implement his work. So I just think that what would be so much more interesting is if we could take the content of design, be it in 3D or probably in 3D world. And for the use case, for the person, give them just what they need to do the task at hand. And I think if we can get out of the paradigm of these sets of documents, which is going to be difficult because, like I said, the jurisdictions having authority require it as a submission for entitlements or for permit. But if we can get out of that paradigm and just have this mass of data that represents the design and extract from it what you need when you need it, I think that's far more compelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so, Violet, I'm literally doing a presentation next week called Building is a Verb.
Oh my God.
There are no new ideas.
Spying on this guy?
But
Hey, I have a presentation that says the same thing.
now I need one. Talker should be a guest.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that Michael's got a really good point. I have what amounts to a religious conviction that people make bad decisions because they don't understand the consequences of the decisions they're making at the time. And surfacing more and more what is actual performance data is going to be much more interesting. So, a good example for like a builder who's hooked into the operation of the building might be they have all the IoT information pouring in, so they know how buildings behave in a certain way. That becomes an analysis to predict how new buildings will work. And so I think the thing we're looking at is a future where we really do understand, like, if we have to move the building 50 feet, right? Like everything, we know everything about that. This is what the traffic patterns are going to do. This is what, which Starbucks is going to be successful nearby, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We can know that. We can do that now. And I think like being able to know that, pulling all that stuff together so people can make truly informed decisions is the future. And I really believe it's going to transform the built environment.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I'm going to just kind of plus one from what's been led up to here. We're talking about how technology is going to shape the way in which we communicate information ultimately. And I'm certainly somebody that feels that, like, look, drawings are very useful representations of information, and they're very effective at what they do. What's interesting is, Mark Andreessen in, was it 2009, wrote, software's eating the world, and it's slowly eating the understanding of projects in AEC, where the technology has that ability to understand not just, what something's going to look visually, but the behavior, the performance characteristics. And so, what we're in is this moment where there's so many more potential capabilities than ones that are practically useful. And I think we're just in a place where we're kind of iterating to figure out, hey, what's the actually useful way to understand that information? And so to me, it's the end state won't be an or of drawings or models. It's going to be an and. The Boolean operation is an and it's going to be a model, and it's going to be an overlay in an AR headset, and it's going to be a bunch of data moving through APIs. It's all of these things. And it's really just going to be, on the technology side, it's a race to who can build a user experience that everybody wants to use to accomplish that job. And then you can build a business behind it and get your flywheel spinning. And then, you're off to the races.
A race until you have to hit the red ocean.
Yeah, you got to, well, look, we're steering clear of that red ocean right now. And that's the big challenge, is what's going to happen in that, the Thunderdome of drawing production, and how that interfaces with all these other upstream applications that are trying to own the logic that created that representation.
Yep. So we have 2 minutes. Any final thoughts for anyone?
Start from this end and go that way again? Or?
Well, how about start in the middle and go left and right? Yeah. Go Anthony first.
I don't know if I'm that coordinated.
Look, I would just say that think about your business. Think about where you're paying people to do drudgery. Think about where they make poor decisions because they're poorly informed through no fault of their own. These are places that technological interventions can be made, not with mortgaging your company to get there. And what we urge our customers, and some listen and some don't, is please start small. Think about something that will give you immediate payback, because immediate payback shows your company culture that immediate payback is possible. Right? So you have to craft the problem in such a way that it can be answered quickly and get you an immediate business gain, because then you get the kind of cultural cachet to keep going to solve the next little problem, and then maybe the next biggest problem after that. So There's, depending on your company culture, there's kind of two things. Like everybody's in the deep end of the pool, like we have this really important project and we're just going to pour everything into it. I wouldn't advise that. I would advise something small that affects lots of different things as a way of adopting technology and get people comfortable with the idea that technology can help them.
Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, so I'd say it really is, I'm going to double down on the providing people with information to make informed decisions. I love the wrap it up sign. But thank you. Very subtle.
Yeah, and the clock's right up top. We'll go a little over, but there's a break.
Yeah, great. All right, so I want to double down on that, and also the idea that we want to distill this all down, distill the monotony, bring it down to just what you want to do, the creative process, and let the rest work itself out, right? And then provide you with the information and the options that you might not have thought of something. Right? There might be some other way that could be better and interesting and creative. So boil out the monotony, reduce it down to the stuff that we are good at. It's AI plus person, not AI versus person.
Yes.
I would say just the shift is already here. There's tons of folks graduating, and we're seeing a lot of shift happening, both at large levels like ULI and NCAR, but we're also seeing it from the hordes of folks that are graduating and starting companies like this or going to work in companies like this. So I guess I would just say what Nike says, which is just do it. And like, it's not that easy to get started. And, I'm sure there's folks probably in your company right now that are at the forefront of this kind of thing. So, tag them on this.
Mm-hmm. I'm just going to build right on that because you said the first half of what I wanted to say, which is it's here. You've seen a bunch of great applications in the last hour that can do this for you guys. Automation can benefit your business, but you guys work in a business where failure is really, really bad. You do everything you can to avoid failure. Adopting software, you're going to fail. And so you've got to work through how can you, if at a cultural level, have an organization that doesn't fail in terms of the services you deliver, but is going to fail in terms of the technologies you adopt because it's going to happen and it's going to be a learning process. And finding that balance is probably the biggest challenge for the leaders out there today.
Well, I want to thank everyone sitting up here. It's been
thank you.
Very nice to listen to all the sort of great pieces of information and viewpoints. So with that, we'll call it.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Great. Thanks, everyone.